If you keep making excuses about your alcoholism, you will lose your business. Now, let me repeat that again. If you keep making excuses about any addiction, but let's to keep it easy, say alcoholism, you will lose your business. And why do I say so? And by the way, it doesn't only apply to businesses. Of course, it does apply to any job whatsoever. So if you're watching this, you probably have seen the title, which is How Addicted Leaders Can Build Their Business Back Up Beyond 100%. And in order to explain what I mean by that, I actually have to explain to you the downside. So what are we talking about? We're talking about addiction. And addiction doesn't just arise from one day to another. Addiction is something that's been built up. First of all, it requires some sort of trauma, because why you do it is to numb yourself. So it could be that there's something mentally which is bugging you nonstop, which is traumatizing to you. It could be something that has happened to you. It could be something that's still ongoing. And then, of course, there's something that you've taken a liking to in order to numb yourself. So what's the goal of numbing yourself? Basically, it's like finding that switch to turn your mind off. Stop the chatterbox. And then, of course, there's also another reason for, say, drinking and feeling more relaxed. And that's, it's so much easier to communicate and talk to one another. And that's why a number of people like to actually smoke a joint. Well, I'm not going to say I'm pro smoking a joint. I'm also not going to say I'm against smoking a joint. I do always say, if you do something, do it, just every once in a while. Don't do it too often. And especially make sure that you're not going to depend on it. Here's addiction again. In order to achieve a certain result. Because then it's going to work against you. And, going back to addiction, here's the thing. A lot of people are not willing to say that they are addicted. I mean, who want to say and confess, like, I've got a problem with something, like, for instance, alcohol. I don't think anybody is willing to admit that without good reason. So when do we make that distinction? So there's enjoying, like a glass of wine or a good beer, and still knowing what you're doing. Of course, we can also link it to the limit that it's okay to drive still, but this is not about the limit, because you can still enjoy a beer or a wine without being addicted to alcohol, but still it's too much to drive. But at some point, the amount will be so much that you let go of those limitations in your mind that you've set yourself, and you might go do stupid things. Well, if that happens more often than it doesn't, and it's starting to become your fail-safe, and that's the main thing. So it can happen occasionally, like once a year or maybe twice a year, that you drink way too much and you don't know what you do anymore. But if you do so on a regular basis, and you start doing so straight after a fight or something that has put you down, that's the warning sign that you have a problem. Because you don't know how to solve it by any other means than by going to your drug of choice. See what I'm getting at? So some people use medication, some people use the powder, whatever they have access to. Of course, there are also other forms of addiction. And again, it's related to numbing yourself. And I'm not sure that I want to list too many forms here, but let's put it this way. The things that are basically harming you, whether it's at that same moment or whether it's in the long run or the next day, but all that stuff that makes you maybe feel like, oh my God, I feel so good right now. But then it basically drags you down. So it has a destructive effect on you. That's when you know you're not doing the right thing. And again, when you keep looking for it in order to make you feel good, and by the way, this can be food too, that's when you know, okay, I need to do something about it. But that's the thing. When are you going to reach out to people? When are you going to say, I have a problem and I need your help? Because a lot of people are actually very good at hiding the problem. You know, we are conditioned to always smile and, you know, be good. Which also basically means that when we have been drinking too much, what do we say? Yeah, I know you want to meet, but I'm not feeling very well. Or, yeah, you know, right now is not a good time. But do we actually express it's not a good time because I've been drinking? No, we won't ever say that. It's not until the other knows you and knows of your tendencies that the other might ask, hey, what's going on? Have you been drinking? Of course, you can also tell by, especially when you're sending text messages to one another, you can tell because answers are being avoided. You don't get the answers you're looking for. And so that's a sign on the wall that something is not good. So as far as the excuses, well, the excuses are the result of not wanting to admit it to yourself. So usually the environment already has picked up what's going on. But here's the thing. If you are not acquainted with being addicted, then you might think too lightly about it. So one of the things I learned, and I still think that's a very good thing, is when I was trying to get someone to go into a program, they straight away said, okay, what's the underlying trauma? And that's what's so important. So usually something has happened to cause you to want to numb yourself. It could be things happening at work. It could be things happening in your personal life. It could be something other very traumatic, the loss of a loved one. I mean, there are so many reasons why we cannot deal with reality anymore, because that's what we're talking about not being able to deal with reality. I'm going to take an extreme example, but it does work. So people with ADHD who are very hyper in their mind, you know, it goes like this all the time and it doesn't stop. That's where numbing comes into play. What do you do to make it stop? So I've had my fair share of burnouts. And the first one I remember, and I usually don't drink at all. So nowadays I don't drink at all. And by the way, it's kind of funny to see people who do drink. And, you know, prior to my burnouts, I didn't drink that much either. So at some point, you know, I would go out with friends or colleagues and we would drink a little bit more, but you know, it was never my style. And besides, I'm allergic to it nowadays. So, but I remember with my first burnout that in order to be able to sleep, I put on the television. It couldn't be quiet. All the lights had to be on. And yeah, there I was. A Bailey, another Bailey, you know, all that stuff. And fortunately for me, one of my colleagues quickly found out that something was wrong because I was very snappy. And he said, I think you've got a burnout. And that's how it all played out. So, you know, that's probably the change that set in to learning to speak out and voice myself. And now basically doing these videos for you, and also coaching other people and training them to speak out. So the title says how addicted leaders can build their business back up beyond 100%. Of course, this implies something, and this is not about staying on 100% and not getting above it. This is about basically losing your business due to addiction. And yes, there have been people who lost their business in a day by doing something stupid, especially when you put stuff up your nose or in your arm. Those things are expensive. That's a whole different ballgame compared to the cost of alcohol. But when it comes to doing stupid stuff, making the wrong decisions, that can be done when you're drunk too. And I mean, what if you were to get into an accident and you were to go to the hospital, or you would be in a coma, or you would lose 1 or 2 limbs, or you would end up in jail? Just a few examples of what it could cost you. But overnight, you can basically lose your business. Of course, it can be in the long run too, by not being aware of what's going on, making the wrong decisions, being snappy at clients, not fulfilling your promises anymore. All of those things can lead to you losing your business. So, if you keep making excuses, chances are that this is going to bite you one day in the beep. Well, you don't want that to happen. So, what do you need to do? Well, first of all, you need to put a very huge distance between whatever is making you drink or use or abuse and yourself. So that also means that you need to be aware of what it is that's traumatizing you, what's making you want to numb yourself. And of course, this can already be something that has already happened, like someone committing suicide, a dear friend of you. Or maybe you've lost a very dear friend or loved one or parent and you weren't there and it's haunting you. You can put distance between you and that event because that person isn't there anymore. But what you can do is get therapy. And basically the goal of the therapy is to relive it again and again and again. And each time it gets a little less worse. Because by exposing yourself to it, it sort of gets normalized. It's never going to be normal, but it's not, the emotions don't have that much impact as they had the first time. I mean, compare it to 9/11. What were you doing? You probably know what you were doing. You can probably just tell, I was watching this or I was talking to. It was about that time. And so it's imprinted in your mind. But the more you talk about it, all the emotions that you felt, they are diminishing. And that's what's normal. And that's why it's so important to talk about it. Of course, there are also other ways to go about it. And usually the trick is to make it possible for you to basically see yourself from a distance and observing what's happening and observing what it's doing to you. Well, of course, we're talking about therapy here. But it's sort of like how to neutralize things. And it requires talking, it requires a safe place, a safe space to go to. So going back to, so what are you going to do when you get triggered? So the trigger is when you are talking to someone or something is happening or you're seeing something and bang, you are back at that moment. That feeling, that overwhelming feeling comes back. So if you know that your drug of choice is alcohol, then you should probably have like a lock on the door or something else which reminds you, no, 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 you're not going to do this. And that's the thing. So usually I'm like a grazer, and I don't know if that's a correct word, if it even exists. I do believe that you've got the word grazing, but it's like you have something and I'm like that, and that. So especially when it's been out of my reach, then after that I might, fortunately for me, I do know to stop. But there are people and they can't stop because food gives a direct feeling of feeling good. So there are hormones released which basically give you an instant good feeling straight away. And that's where it gets a little, risky. And that's, of course, so some things, they calm you down. Other things make you more talkative. And again, other things that's basically, it makes you feel good. And you want to stay away from those things. And how are you going to do it? And the first thing you probably should do is reach out to someone before you start taking whatever substance it is. Reach out to someone, and especially if it's a substance like alcohol, which takes like several bottles or cans of beer or whatever it is to reach a certain limit, know that you need to reach out before you're getting there. So maybe it's like a bracelet you're wearing. Maybe it's something like a tattoo you've got on there. Maybe it's like little stickers everywhere, in the house. So they function as reminders. Maybe it's something you can look at like a picture. It doesn't matter, but you need to have a reminder of, oh no, I'm not going to cross this bridge. I'm going to be a good boy or a good girl, and I'm going to stay away from this. Then there's something else you can do. Reach out to other people. That's why in the AA they have sponsors. Though the sponsor is the person you reach out to when you are in a very difficult situation, and at some point you become a sponsor for someone else as well. Of course, that requires that you actually have acknowledged that you have a problem. And without acknowledging it, no sponsor. And they'll probably tell you too, like, yeah, you can keep calling me, but if you don't quit the stuff, then what's the use? And this is the thing. So let's get back to beer or to alcohol. So normally we get raised that it's normal to, at some point when you have dinner, and maybe even when you go out and you find yourself on a terrace, maybe during lunch, that you have like a glass of wine and you actually get to enjoy it. It's part of the meal, the part of the whole experience. Well, that's probably a good thing. However, when you're someone who's prone to addiction, then maybe even taking that first one, but especially when you have multiple ones, that could let you go downhill. So maybe when you are at a party or somewhere else, you might just, let go of everything. And here's the thing, you can have said to yourself, like maybe minutes prior to what's happening, like, oh, it's so good that you're around because I know you can keep me in check. But if you don't really get into what that means, so if you don't put the other one in the role of keeping you in line or in check, then what's going to happen? And so if they don't keep an eye on you and you get to that third beer or whatever it is, then what's going to happen next? And especially people who are also prone to taking drugs. If they come into an environment where they know they can get it, then better watch out, because before you know it, they have found someone. And like for the average person who doesn't know about it, we don't see it, but they know it. They can spot it from a mile away. And that's especially when it comes to people with drug problems. That's why they have safe houses, as in houses where they cannot get access to that stuff. So I'm not talking about the people who need to be protected from others. I am talking about the people who need to be protected from using. So that's a whole different ballgame. And of course, they have like group therapy over there, and there's always someone you can talk to. So protection, being shielded from, is very important. And there's also this other thing. The moment that you don't feel good, the moment that you want to numb yourself, have you learned something to redirect that feeling so you can give in to that feeling, but not by doing something which is going to hurt you or harm others? So maybe it could be a meditation and you actually experience that feeling, but say it's a guided meditation, you can also get out of it. You can experience it. And we can condition our mind to let go if certain triggers are, first of all, working and then being repeated over and over and over again. But I'm not going to say it's easy. It's never going to be easy. That's the truth of it. It's not going to be easy. But there are, like I said, there are some things you can do. You can read about it so you can understand actually what's going on. You can write about it so that you understand, okay, what is happening with me? What's going on in my mind? What's making me feel so sad? So you can actually determine what it is that you need. But I think the most important thing is honesty. Honesty to yourself. Honesty to others. Don't lie to yourself. Don't lie to others, but especially don't lie to yourself. And face up. Face what's going on. And don't be afraid of fixing it. And I know it's not going to be easy because it also usually requires changing circumstances. So like, for instance, when you're prone to drugs, then you might want to change venues like cities, living somewhere else where you can't get to there, or go to a shelter or something, or in a house where you can't get access. Of course, when it comes to food, that's a lot more difficult. But it's the same with smoking. Smoking is probably a light form, but why are we smoking? It's stress related. So you can quit it, but still you're addicted to that substance, the nicotine substance. You're probably addicted to putting it up, holding it in your hands, doing something in between whatever it is you're doing. And that's not even when you're triggered. So when you're triggered, you might go from a few cigarettes to, I don't know, maybe 50 cigarettes a day. Could be, like every other minute. Just as long as it calms you down. And we can also talk about, what else is there? Let's get back to the alcohol. So if you see that you go haywire, and this is especially something which is happening to musicians. For musicians, they can get access to just about anything. There's a lot of pressure. People have a lot of expectations. And also to be creative, you just want to, get the brakes, release brakes a little bit. And, one thing leads to another, and there you are. And we all know people who have died from alcohol substance abuse, or worse. So read about it, watch videos on YouTube, talk to people, but also brace yourself and take precautions. But all of this won't work unless you are honest to yourself about what's going on. So if you want to be the one who wants to build your business back up because you are aware that you are losing touch with your business because you don't know what's going on anymore, you don't have the good talks anymore, you're basically losing focus, and maybe do worse things, then, focus on something that will help you. And quite honestly, if you are a business leader, chances are that at some point you were very good at, building that business. And you had fun when you started doing your business. So get back to what gave you satisfaction and what felt good. And with business comes structure. It comes, people expect certain things from you. So when you make appointments with people and you say, okay, this is what I'm going to do and this is what I expect from you, that will probably help you to get where you need to be. If you want to know more about this, reach out to me, find me. You can find me by finding Lady Lex Live on the Road, either on Instagram. You can leave a comment. Share this also with other people. We can always have a private coaching session. I do help people. I talk about it. I also talk about what's going on. But don't ever do this alone. Find someone to confide in. And it's probably closer than you think, because it doesn't start with the first generation. There are probably generations ahead of you who have started it. So you might have siblings who know about this. And even if it's not siblings, call a hotline. Whoever it is, some stranger, reach out. And that's why there are Alcoholics Anonymous. So you can just go there, share your story, and it won't get anywhere. But please, reach out. Don't be on your own. And again, I'm always here to talk to you if needed.